Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. Today, I want to talk about the brief history of Wall Street, which is synonymous with the New York Stock Exchange. Um, so, the New York Stock Exchange, Wall Street, we use them in synonymous terms, and American finance. And I'll get to it. So, in 1624, Dutch settlers established New Amsterdam, and New Amsterdam came to be known as New York City much later on. Um, and prior to that, the Dutch had established the first, uh, actually invented the first modern stock exchange. That's the Amsterdam Stock Exchange in 1602 in Holland, in the Netherlands, in Europe. And of course, they established the first publicly traded company, the VOC, which is the symbols for the Dutch East India Company. So then the Dutch settlers would establish New Amsterdam in 1624. And there you go. Well, how did it become Wall Street? Well, in 1653, the Dutch governor at the time, who was governor of the colony that the Dutch had established, was also called New Netherlands, right? It went all the way to New Jersey, by the way. But with respect to New York, it was called New Amsterdam. So he had built a 12 foot high defensive wall, right? That ran from the East River all the way to the Hudson River. It was made up of wooden palisades and earth in order to keep out the British, right? To prevent the British from invading the colony. Ironically, so this was established by the Dutch governor at the time, Peter Stuyvesant. That was the name of the Dutch governor, and this was in 1653. So that wall, right? It was made of wood and earth, and the Dutch had called it the city wall. Well, that's the English equivalent. It was called the city wall. Ironically, though, the British would capture New Amsterdam, right, uh, without a fight. The Dutch governor would surrender in 1664, and it was seized. It was, the colony was seized by the British, and the name was changed to New York in honor of the Duke of York, who would later become King James II. So, 1664, they changed the name. The British dubbed it Wall Street, right? Because it was a long street. The city continued to be established, it continued to grow, right? And so it was called Wall Street. And this was in 1664 when it got its name, Wall Street. And so, it had initially been created by the Dutch as a long defensive wall to keep out the British. The British took it over in 1664 and dubbed it Wall Street. Now, in 1699, however, the British would destroy the wall. They would destroy the wall in 1699. Now, in 1792, something would happen under the administration of our first President, George Washington. There was a financial crisis, the nation's first financial crisis, first financial panic. And this would cause 24 stockbrokers to meet on Wall Street under a tree, right? So you see, trees have been very significant in U.S. history. I don't know if it is metaphorical, right? I don't know if it's supposed to symbolize something, but Wall Street was established under under a tree on the street called Wall Street, right? So 24 stockbrokers got together during the financial crisis and decided to create what was called the Buttonwood Agreement, uh, in which they made decisions on how to trade, how to buy and sell, and how to restore investor confidence in trading of securities, trading of stocks, and how to establish commissions. And they also try to regulate, basically they're trying to regulate the trading of securities and shore up investor confidence. So that was the establishment of the New York Stock Exchange. And this was on May 17, 1792, right? Under our first president, George Washington's administration. Um, so in about a week from now, the New York Stock Exchange will be 234 years old. So a lot of birthdays coming up. So Wall Street is almost as old as the founding of. Well, the Wall Street, the colony, of course, is older, but the New York Stock Exchange is almost as old as the the nation, right? The nation will be 250 years old on the 4th of July. So yeah, so that was the founding of the New York Stock Exchange, May 17, 1792, through the Buttonwood Agreement when 24 stockbrokers met together. And the name Wall Street, though, has become synonymous with American finance, high finance. Um, so over time, of course, the initial trading companies, they established their headquarters on that street, Wall Street, right, in New York. And of course, it continued to be the center of finance for a long time. But, finance has since evolved. And, the purpose of Wall Street is to raise capital and to also create a secondary market, right? In the trading of shares where stockbrokers buy and sell shares. But securities have since advanced, they become more complicated. I'm able to discuss this, by the way, because I was once a stockbroker. I was a stockbroker for one of those major Wall Street firms today. Bank of America is the second largest diversified financial services company in the world. It's a bank. We now have universal banks. During what was called the Glass-Steagall Act, they separated investment banks from commercial banks because of the Great Depression, right? After the Great Depression, in order to regulate the financial markets better, right? And and just create stronger guardrails. But later, over time, they removed those, what was called, the glass wall. They removed the division, and of course, we now had universal banks. So commercial banks like Bank of America were able to buy up investment banks. They have a variety of services that they offer. They're investment banks. Investment banks, those are banks who specialize in advising corporations when they want to merge or acquire a company. And they also have brokerage houses within them, that's investment banks, so that they can trade, buy, and sell securities on behalf of their clients. So they keep the financial markets liquid. And that's the role of the New York Stock Exchange. Of course, there's the NASDAQ as well, which has grown. Now, importantly, the term Wall Street, because stockbroking finance has evolved with the advent of technology, the infusion of technology, right? And the advancement of the telecommunication systems, which means stockbrokers can be in Boston like I was. I was a stockbroker in Boston, but I could say, well, I was working on Wall Street because now you do your trading of securities on, you know, on a terminal, on a computer. You don't have to be physically located on Wall Street to trade shares like they did in the early days, right? So Wall Street has now become symbolic, right? It's a metaphor. So you could be in Washington D.C. and you could be a Wall Street firm, but traditionally people still have their headquarters. They still have a firm. They have a presence on Wall Street in New York. That's firms that have seats on the New York Stock Exchange, and they may have their headquarters somewhere else, like Bank of America. Bank of America is a Wall Street firm, right? Because it's a big company. It owns Merrill Lynch. Merrill Lynch was a New York company. Bank of America bought it. It was a commercial bank. They bought Merrill Lynch. Not even prior to that, the Bank of America had its own investment bank on Wall Street. But the headquarters of Bank of America is in Charlotte, North Carolina. I remember I went back there, and that was where I was trained. So there are other banks as well that are big, and you could call them Wall Street firms like Wells Fargo. I worked for a bank that Wells Fargo bought, Wachovia Securities. That was where I started off. Um, so, and so now the name Wall Street is synonymous with American finance, high finance. And of course, I did an earlier video in which I explained that it has New York Stock Exchange. The New York exchanges have two-thirds of the market capitalization of equity, investable equity, right? They have two-thirds of the market capitalization, which is around $50 trillion in the world, right? And so they have those guardrails, very secure, regulated systems, investor protection, just because of the long history, right? The long history. When companies want to go public, they go through investment banks. And like recently, we've been talking about Elon Musk, that he will be the first trillionaire, right? That he has a net worth of between $750 billion to $850 billion today. It depends on how investor confidence is going, right? So I think I recently read that SpaceX will be launching its IPO, and its estimated value will be about 1.5 to 1.75 trillion dollars, right? So that's very large. I think his Tesla is already worth what has a market capitalization of about 1.3 trillion dollars, right? Of course, that doesn't make it the largest company in the world. There are larger firms like Apple. Apple's market capitalization is about $4.3 trillion. Sometimes it's Microsoft is ranked number one. Sometimes it's Alphabet. Alphabet, of course, is the parent company of Alphabet is the parent company of Google. Now, let's not confuse what market capitalization is with revenues, right? The revenue of a company is how much is sold, how much it produced, how much it's sold, right? I think while Apple's capitalization is about $4.3 trillion, right? Uh, its revenues, I think last year, its revenues were just over $400 billion, right? $400 billion is a fraction of $4 trillion capitalization. So the capitalization comes from what's going on Wall Street, the trading in the securities, right? How the securities are trading on Wall Street, right? So that's different from what the company is producing. So if the investors have confidence in the fundamentals. The fundamentals, those are like revenues, right? Profits that are coming out, right? Then they would, the it will cause some people to speculate, right? You say speculation keeps the uh, the stock market robust, right? It keeps it liquid. It keeps it, we need a little bit of speculation, right? Um, and of course, investor confidence, how the investors feel about the prospects of the company, how the company is doing. Um, yeah, so revenues, that's very different from market capitalization. But all of this great capitalization, that's a result of the work and the innovation of Wall Street. What is it? Excuse me. The innovation, the inventiveness, resourcefulness of our stockbrokers, investment bankers, analysts, all the people associated with the New York Stock Exchange and Wall Street. Um, and so that was just a rough history of Wall Street. I'll do something else and talk a little bit more about the evolution of Wall Street. So that the history is, rather interesting. So you see how the Dutch were very significant, right, in the development of New York City. Again, the first they invented the stock exchange, the modern stock exchange, through the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, the first company. That's the Dutch East India Company, and it's interesting that I just want to point out. So it's just a little bit. Um, Kind of interesting. The two men who are said to be the richest ever, right? They're Dutch descent. John D. Rockefeller, right? Rockefeller was Dutch descent. It is as Forbes once estimated that he would have been the richest man in modern history. That he was the first world's billionaire in 1916. When he died in 1937, he was valued at about 1.4 billion dollars, and they said in today's money that would be about $500 billion. However, another man of Dutch ancestry, right? Uh, Elon Musk, who was born in South Africa, and his father is Dutch descent, one of the uh, Dutch settlers in South Africa. Um, Elon Musk is said to be worth, over $700 billion, and he's set to become the first world's trillionaire. So kind of interesting. Europeans historically, they considered the Dutch to be very materialistic, right? Very practical, very materialistic. So there was a time Amsterdam was the world's busiest port, right? World's busiest port, and they made a lot of, so everything passed through them, a lot of trade and things like that. They were not as powerful as the English or the European kings, the King of England, the King of France, right, who were rivals, or even the King of Spain. In fact, the Dutch at one time had been a colony of the Spaniards. Um, but by the way, they had a Dutch king who became King of England, right? William of Orange, William of Orange, William the Third of Orange, and it's after him that the College of William and Mary, right, the name. So he married the daughter of James the Second. James the Second, of course, was the one whom he was Duke of York, and it's after him that Uh, New York got its name, right? It used to be New Amsterdam when the British seized New Amsterdam from the Dutch in 1664, and Governor Peter Stuyvesant, surrendered without a fight, despite building the long defensive wall that came to be known as Wall Street. He didn't fight. He just surrendered to the British, and uh, the name changed from New Amsterdam to New York in honor of the Duke of York, who became King James II. King James II was forced out of his throne because he had an affinity for Catholicism, and the British were against the Catholics, and so they invited William, who was he was the king of the ruler of Holland. He was called William of Orange. Uh, and the daughter, he was married to the daughter of the King of England, James II. So Mary II, it became a joint rulership, king and queen. So they're called together. So it's an unusual reign. It was an unusual reign. William and William and Mary, right? It wasn't like one was a consort. So today, Queen Camilla of England, she's not a joint ruler of, uh, of, 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 of England, right? The ruler is actually King Charles II, and even though they refer to Camilla as Queen Camilla, she is a consort, right? So she's a wife of the king. That's why she's got that title. She's his queen. But under William and Mary, they had a joint sovereignty. So it was William and Mary. They were joint rulers, right? Uh, both of them had dual sovereignty, right? they joined, they had co-sovereignty, right? Co-sovereignty, they shared the throne. Yeah, the British history, kind of interesting. So that's the founding of Wall Street. I'll do more videos. My name is Olurotimi Osha. I'll keep you posted.